I'd like to welcome everybody to this seminar on European societal impact of submarine cable system throughout the Arctic Ocean. We got over 70 participants from all over Northern Europe and Southern Europe and the Nordics, and that is quite astounding. The agenda, I will come with a short welcome and introduction, then we'll give the word to Philippe Batista from the Portuguese Permanent Representation for the European Union. Then we'll hear Ari Yushi talking about the Arctic Connect submarine fiber system. And then in the end, we'll have Kim Okoski talking about LUMI and the importance of Arctic Connect. And then there will be time for some questions and answers. My introduction has 5 different topics: why submarine cables are important, why Europe is being squeezed by US and China, how we can create a European connectivity strategy, and how we can work towards a European data center strategy. And last but not least, why Arctic is important in this perspective. Why submarine cables are so important. The internet continues to grow in economic relevance and volume. It's a part of our critical infrastructure of societies nowadays. The society impact of the digital economy is massive. Submarine cables are the way to interconnect continents and islands. Over 97% of today's internet traffic uses fiber optical submarine cables. There are satellite technologies coming up with SpaceX and others, but they are still, from a latency point of view and especially from a capacity point of view, not comparable with the capabilities of the submarine cable systems. Therefore, submarine cable systems are strategically important as a key of form the core of the critical digital infrastructure of societies. Europe is being squeezed by US and China. If we look at the investments, and it's 2 different types of squeezes. I've added some examples here, but if I look at the investments from the big tech companies from 14 to 18, they invested over $300 billion in subsea cable systems and data centers around the planet, also in Europe. On the other side, we also see China with a new digital Silk Road that are also investing tens of billions of dollars in gaining influence, and that also touches Europe. The nervousness in US for the rise of the China, in that sense, you can see in the report that was done by CSI. If you want to have a bit of view on the investment that was done by online service providers, we provided a link into that. And there are also some links into the China Silk Road initiatives. The main thing is that both the US tech companies and the Chinese government has some clear strategies of dominating the world. We are in between, despite that we in principle are in the center of many of these communication passes. Until now, the EU has not had, the European companies, the European countries have not had a digital strategy for carving our own place in this world from a geopolitical point of view. So looking into creating a European connectivity strategy, Europe is today connected with submarine cables. Most of the currently telco-owned cables are old, and many are either being replaced or about to be retired. The majority of modern cables are controlled by non-European big tech companies. As digital is the future, Europe must take its destiny in its own hands. Europe needs a European-led submarine cable projects. Europe needs to establish funding to match the big tech companies in China. And Europe also needs to look in a reciprocity regulatory regime. What I mean by that is, if you look towards US as an example, there's a very strict regulatory regime for foreign cable systems landing there, giving the US companies an unfair advantage. We need to look from a European side of view how we deal with this and how we can actually also set our own agenda on this part. This is a cornerstone for the European Digital Gateway Declaration that Philippe will be talking about later on. But submarine cables are not the only thing that we need to worry about. Data has become the new oil. Storing and computing vast amounts of data requires data centers. Data centers need power, cooling, land, and connectivity. And just like submarine cables, non-European big tech companies run the majority of data centers in Europe, hence also having access to huge amount of European data. For Europe to be both digital sovereign and green, we need a strategy where we place data centers where there's an abundance of green energy, natural cooling, and real estate. Those need to be created and run by European-led companies and with excellent fiber optic connectivity. Why is Arctic so important? From my mentioning of the data centers, the Arctic region has all of these things. It has abundance of real estate. It has an abundance surplus of green power, green energy, and natural cooling. Here, Arctic Connect also provides a submarine cable system across the Arctic Ocean that for the first time will connect Europe with Japan and the west coast of North America directly. It's a unique and shorter route. It will greatly add to European digital sovereignty. It's led by a European company and can be using European technology. The Arctic is a perfect place for data centers with the energy and with a low cost renewable energy, and we can move data and not energy around. It creates additional business opportunities in the remote regions and shifting data gravity to low climate and more efficient operations. A digital empowered Europe by 2020 is a statement I picked up from the Commission, but it requires that Europe have a strong and well-funded digital infrastructure strategy, including a European digital connectivity strategy and including a European digital data center strategy. We need to balance the challenges from both from US and for China. We need to achieve this by intelligently using the abundance of green energy, cooling, and land in the Arctic region. This will conclude my introduction, trying to setting the stage for the next speaker, which will be Philippe Batista, which is attaché to the Portuguese permanent representative to the European Union, and which we've been working very diligently with on the subject of subsea cable systems. I hereby pass the word to Philippe.
Thank you very much, René. Good morning, everyone. It's really a pleasure and an honor to be here, and thank you for the invitation. And also, before starting my presentation, a special thank to you guys as well, because you did really committed with us on the development of this strategy, so you're part of it as well. Actually, the Arctic platform, the Northern Sea and Arctic platform, came out from your contribution and from your very interesting insights and ideas. So I'll say that what we achieved here, not the Portuguese presidency per se, but the European Union, the Commission and the Council, is truly also thank you to you, because you did contribute to the overall success, or at least we hoped it will be a success in the next years. So with no further delay, just some ideas to take away and try to make an introduction for the overall deployment of this strategy. This all started because we have the clear sensation and we are totally believers that the next 10 years will be crucial for the future of the digitalization of Europe. And for that reason, the communication that the Commission has just issued and sent it out, the Digital Decade, early this month, couldn't be more timely and accurate as well. And we are also happy to see that international connectivity, it's also in the heart of this communication. We are proud, of course, as presidency that we contributed to this extent, but we are even more happier to see that at the end of the day, all 27 member states shared the same concerns, signed the declaration. Also, as you will see afterwards on the presentation, we had also Iceland and Norway joining this overall strategy, which shows that in fact this is something that everyone is very keen on and is essential for the future of Europe and the whole digitalization process. So now we can say that the European Union plus the two partners that I mentioned share a common goal, and this is not just an initiative that was started by the Portuguese presidency, but it's in fact something that Europe has now in its heart. What can we say more? I mean, and René, you made a brilliant introduction, so especially underlining that either the US and China have their own strategies in terms of international connectivity, and Europe was squeezed between these two giants. What I can say now is that we no longer need to be squeezed because now we have a strategy that we can implement. That can be implemented sharing the visions of Europe. And that's the European Data Gateway Platform strategy that combines not only international connectivity, but also data, which is a very important topic, as you mentioned as well on your presentation. Just to give you an overall introduction, I would like to share with you the starting point of this journey, if I may use the expression. It all started in Portugal when we came to the conclusion that there was an urgent need to replace the links between Portugal mainland and the islands that we have there, Madeira and Açores. We came to that conclusion because we noticed that the life expectancy of the cables were coming to an end, so they'll be ending on 24, 25, and so that created the first awareness that we need to do something. Not only those cables are old and coming into an end, but more important, they are not able to connect with the demands of data that we're going to have in the next years. So we had several discussions with different stakeholders in member states. And after a few months of intense discussions and shared visions, we came up to the conclusion and the recognition from everyone that also from the Commission that we had a need to establish an international connectivity strategy for the European Union. But then some questions came up. First of all, how could we bring the 27 member states together and sharing the same vision? Because I mean, at the end of the day, and you know this probably better than me, the decision process in Europe is somehow quite difficult. That's true, but I'm also a true believer that at the end of the day, based on the methods and all the way that we take decisions in the European Union, in the core of the European Union, in the Council, the results are pretty much better than sometimes when we don't have discussions and the decisions are just take upon one vision or one single head. Then the second question was, how can we ensure a common strategy that allocate the proper financial resources with the different 27 member states' visions and interests? And the third question was, how can we better plan a global international strategy, ensuring that all member states can also relate to it? This was what we had in mind when we started to design the strategy, and this is what was in the heart of the European Data Gateway platforms, that after analyzing these three questions that I mentioned, we came up to the conclusion that this was the best way forward. Why? Because first of all, it brings together quite 4 different strategic regions of Europe, promoting and developing them at the same time that they contribute for a bigger goal and seeking a common European interest. Also because based on this idea of 4 different platforms, we can also better plan European connectivity between the member states, promoting more resilience, and redundancy within the European market. And finally, based on this approach, you can also build a connectivity strategy between Europe and the rest of the world to make us more autonomous, which is one of the goals of the overall strategy, and better connected to other digital markets, which, as Rene said before, is also a cornerstone for Europe to become a world leader of digital economy. I will now try to share my slides, which is pretty much. It says that I cannot share.
I'm sharing your slides. They are visible now.
Oh, okay. So this is the European Data Gateway Platform strategy. So you can just go to the next slide, please. Thank you, Eric. So the starting point in terms of the discussions within the Council were taken from the European Council conclusions of the 2nd of October 2020, where there was a clear message from the Council saying that in order to achieve our digital sovereignty, within other important topics, we also need to develop our digital capacities and infrastructures. And so this was the first step when we started to design the strategy. Next slide, please. The other question that came up during the elaboration of the strategy was to understand if we were really prepared for the future as Europe. Because first of all, I mean, and these numbers that I present here were taken from different reports and different assessments that we have. But the question that most worried us was, are we really ready for the future? And by the future, I mean the volume of data that we're going to have, but also its value, and how can we actually tackle and be prepared for that? And the conclusion was that no one really knows what will be the future in terms of data. The only thing that you knew is that based on that initial idea that I mentioned, when we noticed that by replacing the links between Portugal and the islands, we need to upgrade the systems, the submarine cable systems, because I mean, no one knows what really is going to be the volume of data. So in order to be prepared and to have a strategic international digital infrastructure, Europe must think big and must also be prepared to balance the investments between the 4 different platforms. Why? Because based on those different 4 platforms, for sure we can better prepare and make a clear definition from Europe to the rest of the world, which platform could be critical in a certain point, or other could be less critical in terms of investments on the second phase. Next slide, please. This is also already tackled by René, and this is actually a copy from your presentation, which I gladly took, and also proves the good cooperation and interactions that we had with you guys. And I mean, this image speaks for itself, because it's true. I mean, the sector and the submarine cable industry have changed in the last years. I mean, the old investors, the telecom operators, the traditional telecom operators are no longer the key players in this industry, as René has mentioned as well. I mean, most of the investments now are made either by private companies like the OTTs, the GAFAs, or by major countries like China. And so what we can take away from this map is that, in fact, if we want to have autonomy, this is not the way forward. The second point that I would like to take out from this image is also the fact that we faced Brexit. And as you know, the UK is the biggest digital hub in terms of connectivity, but also in terms of data that we had in Europe. But the fact is that Brexit came and the UK is no longer a member of the European Union. So when we think about our strategic autonomy, I mean, we must think that it relies, in fact, in a country that's no longer a member of the European Union. So this creates some emptiness in terms of the approach that we want to build, and that's the fact why we need to also to create that strategy. Next slide, please. So again, coming to the idea. So the idea was to build this European data gateways platform strategy based on the assessment that we did had regarding the needs of connectivity for Europe in the coming years. And to that extent, I mean, the best approach that we thought was to divide Europe in 4 different big platforms, because based on that, you can actually better prepare and better design a strategy towards the connections that we want to have to the other digital markets. I'll not take long in terms of the idea why it's better to have 4 different platforms than to have one single platform or act like just one block, because I think it goes without saying. And I think also from your side, you're going to tackle the approach to the North Sea and Arctic data gateway platform, and it will be clear for everyone that when we have 4 different platforms that also match 4 different very important geopolitical and geostrategic regions of Europe, it's obvious that it's better to combine the strategies and to understand where can we invest first, why do we invest there, and also take away in terms of security, in terms of resilience, to better enable Europe to have a strategy. I'll stop here. This is actually my last slide. I think there is another slide, but just to thank you for your attention. And once again, let me underline the important contributions that you guys made to the overall strategy. And I mean, at the end of the day, the key message that I wanted to leave is that this is only possible with the collaboration and cooperation between different stakeholders. And you guys are part of it, as well as other stakeholders and other member states. And I do really believe that with this approach now, we do have to move forward and take the next steps. Final word and to conclude. But I think I'll have time as well afterwards to tackle this topic. The timeline after the signing of the declaration that was signed just a week ago during the Digital Day, where I said that it was signed by the 27 member states, also by Iceland and Norway. First of all, and in order to now implement this idea of the data gateway platform strategy, the first step will be the connection of a study by the Commission to map all the digital public and private connectivity infrastructures to understand what we have actually in Europe. This is the important starting point to understand from where do we start. Also, a second assessment that the European Commission will take on board as well is to understand and make an estimation of the incoming and outgoing data flows, volumes to and from Europe to the different parts of the world. And then 2 other minor but not less important points is the need to look into this strategy also in terms of research, and this is something that everyone understands it's important, and it's also in the base of the inauguration of the Link cable, which is part of the Bella program that will luckily also will be inaugurated during our presidency in June this year. And last but not least, and I think this is something that you are also very sensitive to, is the desire to upgrade submarine cable systems as critical infrastructures, which mean that will be also under the umbrella of the NIS directive, and goes without saying the importance of the submarine cables in the overall cybersecurity framework. One last word, and I'll shut up right away. To give you an example of the importance of the submarine cables in this framework of cybersecurity and safety as well. During the studies that we started to replace the CAM ring, so the ring between Portugal and the islands, we came up to the idea and working together with the different universities that it could be the opportunity to include sensorization in the new submarine cables that we have there. Not only because in terms of disaster prevention and early awareness that can be created, because every time there is a underwater earthquake and the possibility of having a tsunami, we can create this early awareness and reduce the impact of such a catastrophe in land, but also in terms of detection of underwater movement. The submarine cables, if they're enabled with sensors, they can also be used for that, and this is a very important point for the militaries, for instance, for the army, for the navy, to understand what's going on under the sea. Also, as a security reason, in order to prevent disruption of connectivity, we can then understand when it was when happened and exactly where did that happened, because in order to intervene and to make the replacement and to make it work again, it's important to understand where exactly that happened, because as you know better than me, when there is a cut in the submarine cable, and you guys have a lot of problems with that in the North Sea and in the Arctic region, it's important to understand and to act quickly in order to restore the communications, which are vital to everyone. I'll stop here. Once again, thank you for the invitation, and of course I'll be available for any questions or any doubts that you may have. Thank you very much, René.
Thank you, Philippe, for your very good presentation. I think there's a lot to be said about this that we will not be able to do just in this short time in that sense, but it's clearly a very important subject for all of Europe in that sense. Nortunet and the 5 Nordic Enrons has been working on this for quite some years now, and it's really great to see things moving along, and that there's so much focus on this on the European level. We've also been working very closely with Senior, which is a Finnish-based company, and I would like to pass a word to Ari-Jussi Knapila, which is the CEO of Senior, to tell us a bit more about the Arctic Connect submarine fiber system. I'll hand the word over to you, Ari-Jussi.
Thank you, René. Eric, do you have my presentation set? That was sent quite late, but or should I?
Yes, Ari-Jussi, I'm happy to run your presentation.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Eric. So good morning on my behalf as well. As René introduced, Cinia is a Finnish-based company. We're actually commercially operating company, though majority owned by State of Finland. We are operating on basically 3 business lines: network connectivity services, critical software development services, and cybersecurity services. And now, of course, this Arctic Connect submarine cable system project that we have been promoting already for years is predominantly, let's say, taking or in the field of network connectivity services, and definitely also in the cybersecurity services. So I'm happy to give you an update of the project here. And thank you, René, and the rest of the arranging team for an opportunity to make this introduction of our very dear project. So click if you go forward to the next slide. So the route for the Arctic Connect is basically drawn here. So majority of the route, or at least more than half of the route, is going through the Arctic Sea region from the Barents Sea, from the left side, from the northern part of Europe. The planned landing station or landings are actually in Kirkenes Bay in Norway, and then going through the Arctic Sea about 6,500 kilometers from Barents to the Bering Strait, and then down to Pacific Ocean, and the planned base route is actually landing in Japan. The primary plan at the moment is to land in Tokyo, probably some alternative landings in Japan as well. And then we are, of course, having some of the landings in the Russian continent here are just optional. So basically the only landings on the Russian side in the system are in Murmansk area on the European side, and in Vladivostok area on the Asian side, and then probably in Anadyr for the powering purposes. Click for the next on the next slide. Thank you. So as we all know, and as also René and Philippe already stated, there is a huge growth in all sort of digital content throughout the world, and particularly one of the routes which or one of the routes where the growth is let's say well above the average is actually the route between Europe and Asia. The present main route for the traffic between these two large areas is actually either by the southern submarine route going from Mediterranean to Indian Ocean, and then basically to the southern part of Asia, or even more or much more of the traffic is going through the transatlantic cable systems, and then over the North America, and then again through Trans-Pacific cable systems. So I would say by our estimations, clear majority of the traffic between Europe and Asia today travels through North America. It's an inexpensive route, but it is a long route, and therefore we see that there is a clear need and demand for alternative new routes, faster routes, and also alternative routes to create resilience, redundancy. Look for the next page, please. As said, this route between through the Arctic Ocean would definitely be a completely new part of the global network architecture. That is something that has not been there yet, but there is an opportunity with a relatively short cable system to connect three continents, Europe, Asia, and North America. The distances between continents are shortest closer to the pole. So the distance between Northern Europe and Northern North America, as well as Northern Asia, is by far shorter by traveling through the Arctic Sea than by traveling through the traditional routes, which are closer to equator. So the route from the northern part of Europe down to Tokyo would be just over 10,000 kilometers, and as said, the length of the system, and therefore the round trip delay and latency of the data traffic is one of the advantages for this route. But I would say that at least as important is the reliance and redundancy that is bringing to the global network architecture. So this new route definitely is increasing the cybersecurity of the overall global network, and therefore, of course, also the European connectivities. The project itself is completely commercial. Of course, all sort of aid and support from the public sector is welcome, and of course, naturally, it is also serving public sector customers, and we are extremely grateful for Nordunet's indication of interest to this route by an inform of letter of intent in early this year. Next slide, please. The system is designed to consist of 3 subsystems out of which 2 are in the base system. The base system consists of 1 international subsystem from Europe to Asia, and another subsystem which is serving mainly Russian domestic purposes, connecting the western part of Russia to the eastern part of Russia. Next, the system itself is, and then there is an additional opportunity to expand it also to have and consist of other subsystem connecting North America to both to the Asian end of the international system as well as the European end of the international system. The overall design, the size of the system is designed to be 12 fiber pairs, out of which 10 would be serving the international purposes and 2 for the Russian domestic purposes. Next one, please. The project is basically conforming 3 stages. We are well in the design phase now. We are making the technical plan and technical design. We are attracting customers as Nordunet and several others in the world as well. Same time attracting also investors and creditors. We are making desktop studies to find the best possible route for the cable. We are doing even offshore studies. Most of the offshore studies will be part of the second phase, which is a construction phase, but we also already started some of the seabed surveys during last navigational season, going through the Arctic Sea from the Barents Sea to the Bering Strait, and having the preliminary seabed survey done. We are, of course, also communicating with possible construction vendors. There isn't too many companies in the world who are experienced in constructing this type of submarine cable, but fortunately there is alternatives, and we have a very close negotiations and discussions and planning sessions with more or less all of the potential vendor candidates as well. The next phase will be then the construction phase. Basically, the present plan is to enter into the construction phase in year 2022, and then the construction with let's say preliminary seabed surveys, and then eventually the construction of the cable system itself and cable lay as well would take us to 24-25, when the operation of the cable system would then start. That is even stated in the next slide. So Erik, if you click to the next slide. So of course there has been already a lot of development work and study work done prior to 2019, but in 2019 we actually signed a preliminary contract with a Russian-based operator, the second biggest operator in Russia, called Megaphone. Memorandum of understanding was actually signed in June 2019, And basically in that MOU, we agreed to establish a development company, which was established last year. The companies owning the development company is Cine Alliance and Megaphone. In the Cine Alliance, we have companies from Norway, Finland, Japan, and this development company's purpose is actually to bring the project to the phase where we are fully bankable and ready to start the construction investment. So this year is a busy year for negotiations with potential customers as well as funding sources. We probably also continue with our marine survey this year as well, but particularly next year we'll be busy with the marine survey, and hopefully then also already we can launch the cable manufacturing next year, and then do the route construction and also landing site construction works in 23-24. So that's the present time plan. Click, Eric. Of course, when we are saying that we are landing or planning to land in Barents Sea coastline in Norway, there isn't too much of a customers there. Of course, some very important customers there as well, but we need to bring the traffic down to the rest of the Europe, and therefore we also have initiated a project called Terrestrial Backbone Finland, bringing the connection from the Arctic Sea shore down to major hubs in Europe, through Finland, of course through Sweden and Norway as well. There is also a plan for an additional submarine cable system in Baltic Sea called Sea Lion 2. There is already a submarine system called Sea Lion 1, which is from southern Finland to northern Germany, built by Cinia about 5 years ago. That starts to be fully employed, and therefore we are planning to implement a new south-north direction cable system in Baltic Sea. Baltic Sea is, if not the only, at least one of the few inner seas of EU. So therefore it's of course not only serving the transit purposes of Europe, Asia, but also the kind of regional purposes and regional requirements of Northern Europe. And then basically as a handover to Kimmo to present a project called LUMI, which is a Europe high performance computing system that would of course be by our route as well, and serving the connectivity requirements of that system. So thank you very much for your attention, and handing over back to Rene, and then through Rene to Kimmo, I suppose. Thanks.
Thank you very, very much, Ari, for your presentation of Arctic Connect. I will happily hand over to Kimmo to talk about what this means for LUMI, the HPC project in Finland under the European HPC projects, and what it does for enabling research and innovation. Hereby over to you, Kimmo.
Thank you very much. Can you see the slides?
Yes, we can.
Okay, so it's a pleasure to be here. So nice, during the next 15 minutes, I will cover a little bit about some of the activities in Europe, which are some of the potential big users of the connections to Asia and elsewhere. And I think much of that already was nicely prepared from the previous talks, but there are some other aspects I would like to add here. So a couple of years ago in Europe, there was a lot of concern about Europe lacking behind in terms of high-end data and computing resources. And that actually created the need to do something in order to be competitive again. And an initiative called Euro HPC was born. And today, most of the European countries, the ones you see here in the bluish color and also the dark gray, are involved in the Euro HPC consortium, which works together in order to make this European capacity in a competitive stage again. Of course, it's not only computing capacities, everything related to that in infrastructure like data, competence development, training, education, and also very important part of it is networks around in Europe and outside Europe. And as a result of this Euro HPC, there are large investments to these computing infrastructures. Last year, there were first of all there was a joint undertaking established between these countries and the European Union, and last year there were a number of procurements for computing systems, where we ended up. Eventually, there will be three. Large consortiums, large installations. We call it pre-exascale, so systems, and then the number of five European systems called petascale systems. So eight environments all together, and one of them is LUMI. And LUMI is a bit special also because of it's a consortium of 10 countries. It's not only a Finnish consortium, of course, it's 10 countries. So we are coordinating it, but all the Nordic countries are involved, as also Switzerland, Belgium, Czech Republic, Poland, and Estonia. And all these countries, they invest together to one single huge environment, which will be placed in Kajaani. And you saw from Arius's last slide the map of Finland, and Kajaani was pointed out there, as it's also here in this map. And but I would like to highlight this. It's only one of the three large consortiums in Europe which are intending and going to work together. But LUMI has also the other ones in Spain and Italy, as well as the five smaller installations. They will all serve the whole Europe. So the data connections, for example, to Asia, it's not only a case of the Northern Europe, but it's for the whole Europe, as we also heard it's part of the networking development, more in larger networking development, including also things like Southern Europe networks. We heard from our Portuguese colleagues, and also the other ones presented by Arius. Okay, so that's about a little bit about the background. The LUMI itself is an investment of 202 million euros, and half of it paid by Commission, and actually half of the resources also will be used for the European science, and the other half for the consortium partners. The procurement last year went, I would say, extremely well. It ended up here in the north that there will be one of the major systems in the world, globally. So that actually brings it in the quite different level than we used to be. I mean, this will be one of the largest systems when we think about the whole globe, and that also allows a lot of possibilities for collaboration in research and innovation, for example. And this once again puts more emphasis in the networking capabilities. At the moment, by the way, the most powerful system in the world is placed in Japan. In Japan, it's called Fugaku. It's placed in Japan. It's about the same size today than this LUMI will be when it's available at end of this year. So the time schedule is that something comes now in the spring, but most of the system, they come in the November, December timeframe, and will be available then afterwards. So there is also an additional collaboration possibilities for the researchers in Europe and in Japan, and they're using the Arctic Connect in the future for the environments working together in these high-end computing tools. Okay, so the importance here, and one of the messages here, that even though high-end computing in the future, it's an area which is crucial. I mean, we are solving all kind of well, this is a tool to solve world-class scientific breakthrough problems. COVID vaccination, for example, is one of the examples where you heavily have been using high-end computing. You have application areas in many disciplines and domains, like today the climate models, earth sciences is very much using high-end computing. Artificial intelligence capabilities are coming more stronger in the future, and so on and so on. So the application area is large, but the very important thing is to note that in addition, the science is global. It's not limited to Europe, so we need to be able to collaborate with our colleagues outside European borders. Data intensive computing. So when we are talking about high-end computing, we are also talking about data. So of course, so I think some of the very early definitions of a supercomputer is that supercomputer is a device which converts the computational problems to data problems. So that's very true in the sense that, of course, we need to be able to move data close to the computing, and sometimes computing close to the data. But so that puts further needs for these networks. And of course, also by investing in Arctic Cable, for example, we are making this we are enabling the data-driven science and also data economy in Europe, and actually I started to make a Europe central data hub globally. So that requires heavy capacity. A few more points about which already were partly discussed. So Arctic Cable, and here it is. It's a picture about the FUNET network, the Finnish network, which is then of course hooked to NoduNet and GEANT to European network from there, and so on. So in the Nordics, when we are talking about now, for example, enabling a separate pair of cable, we enabling connectivity for the research, for example. So then we are in a quite good situation from that point of view, even though there is a need for building cables, as you saw from Marius's presentation, for example, through Finland and from there to Nordics, and also inside Nordics. In the research and education network, FUNET, and as well as also NoduNet, the capacity is at the moment pretty much up to date, and the investments have been made already during recent years. Some of the building in FUNET is still happening, but that's already funded. So the network in the research and education side is very much up to date. So that also makes it much more easier to utilize the connections overseas efficiently. So locally the situation is good, even though there is a need for additional routes too. So to a little bit wrap up this short interview, short introduction to the topic, I would say that something you will in the future you will hear more about LUMI, of course, and Euro HPC, because the capacities will be in most of these centers. Well, they are being installed at the moment, or at least during this year, they will be taken in most cases into operation. So that will be a common topic for the European collaboration in the future also, and also for a global collaboration. But a little bit to summarize. First of all, the Arctic Connect basic infrastructure for research and education, it's crucial. I mean, this is something we need to do in order to make sure that our researchers and innovation can be competitive. So we need to have highways to Asia in this case, and US, of course, with a low latency. And it is also because it's long-term investment. That means that in next 10 years or more, there is influence, and I mean we need to have a cost-efficient way to scale the networking beyond what we are imagining today, because even though we have different scenarios, I think none of us can really say for sure what's happening in 10 years. But I think all of us can say for sure that whatever is happening, it will require much more network bandwidth than we have today. So this is an investment for the future, and that is something that is very crucial from the European competitiveness. So so I finished this with the presentation with the slide, still pointing out what will the Arctic Connect together with the LUMI and other similar initiatives in Europe enable. So of course we will be able to collaborate much more intensively with our counterparts outside Europe in terms of high-end computing and data. And of course there are a number of potential specific international collaborations. Here are some of the examples. I mean, the climate change, of course, is one area where there are a lot of global collaboration, but it's not limited to that only. I think that is mostly happening. It's happening in most of the scientific areas where there are major scientific problems to be solved. The way we want to do is to support the open collaborative ways of producing and sharing data. In order to share data and move data, of course, the networking is extremely important. And also this, even though I was referring many times in the research side, this is also the technology transfer and the connecting research with the innovation and companies is one area where also the capacity is required. So with these words, thank you very much for the opportunity to present this topic, LUMI, together with Arctic Connect, and thank you very much. And
thank you very much, Kimmo. Thank you very much, Kimmo, for this presentation. I think it's been some really good insights that we've been giving over the last period here. There's a couple of additional things that I would like to add here at the end of the first presentation. In that sense, I think this can only be done by working together. The Nordic countries, NOTONET, is not just the only participants here. We are talking to Chad, we are talking to Germany, we are talking to Holland, and we are talking to Japan, US, and Canada. An Arctic Connect cable system for R&E would not just be for the Nordic countries, but it will be definitively for the global community. Also because when we land both in Japan and in US, there will be additional connections going onwards to the Pacific area, so it has significant impact. So also from a capacity point of view, as Kimmo touched on this one here, this is also about moving big data sets. And to give a bit of perspective of that, moving terabit data sets can be done by 100 gig connections or gigabit connections, but it takes time. It can take days. But nowadays, the scientific data sets has reached the petabyte levels, or some of them even higher, which means that if we don't have good connectivity between the supercomputing center and between the science drivers of this world, we will land in a situation where it will take not just hours, not days, not weeks, but months to transfer big data sets. We will be hampering what we are trying to achieve. Looking at the cost benefit for something like that, we can lean a bit on what some of our colleagues has been doing in the Pacific area. Cable systems like this are typically around 30 years as a project lifetime. ARNET, our peers in the Australian scenario, has actually been building 2 cable systems, or being part of building 2 cable systems out of Australia. Their return of investment has been 7 years out of those 30. So it's a very good business case for this. With these words, I would like to also, as the presentation will be available, add a couple of useful links for people in addition to what we already done. There's links to the Ministerial Declaration for the Data Gateway as a key element of EU's digital decade. We have our position paper of Arctic Connect. There's about who Nordnet is and what the Portuguese presidency is doing. And there's links to Senior and the IT Center for Sciences in Finland. I also added a link in the end because there is studies ongoing in Europe about these type of things, what the impact is. There's actually done a study in 2018 where the economic impact of international connectivity and data centers for Scotland will be, which is quite interesting. I also added a link for that. I hope that the presentation so far has been interesting for people. And with this, I would like to say, something happened here. I would like to say thank you for the first part of this, and thank you to the speakers.